Hello, I'm Richard Lowe, and this is the Leaders and Their Stories podcast. I'm here with Cesar Dongo, and we're here to talk. Cesar, go ahead and take it away.
Okay. Hi, Richard. My name is Cesar Dongo. I'm a regular guy with a lot of trade compliance expertise behind me. I've been working on import-export industry for 30 plus years, which makes me like an old guy, working on that field. But it's been a very challenging role. I had the opportunity to work on different places with big companies in different countries. I've been located in Latin America. I've been dealing pretty much with every single country in Latin America. I've been based also in the US for tons of years. I was living in Europe, also managing the European, Middle East, and Asian countries. Basically, all of them were related to trade compliance. What does trade compliance mean? It's basically all the requirements that you have to fulfill in order to be legal, when you're doing import and export processes. Whenever, you're moving cargo from one country to another, sometimes you're, forced to comply with regulations aside from paying taxes. Because people think that by paying taxes, they're okay. No, they're not. You are not, you are not able to ship to embargo countries, for example. You cannot ship to Cuba or Russia or Belarus or, Iran. You cannot ship to specific people. You cannot ship to Osama bin Laden. You cannot ship to Pablo Escobar. There are a lot of lists, from the U.S. government, from good guys, bad guys, countries and countries that you can and you cannot ship. There are products also that you cannot ship. You can ship commodities without any issue, but you cannot ship any missile drawings, for example, right? Because they are heavily controlled products. There are a lot of regulations that you have to comply. And the thing is that I noticed that a lot of executives don't know or are not familiar or they don't want to know that they are liable for their shipments. If a good from a company, let's say in the US, let's say it's a semiconductor, ends up in a missile in North Korea, the executive of the company that produces semiconductor in the US may go to jail. Even if he sold that product to a distributor in Panama, it doesn't matter because what it matters is the end use of the product. Who's going to be the end user of the product? So they say, well, but we have been shipping these products to the UK or Panama or whatever, where they were not controlled or backward countries. And then after that, they were reshipped to another country. Bad luck, because you are still liable, right? So in order for you to avoid that, it's better to start asking for permission. Contact a CBP, contact the Department of State, ask for a license. If a license is not required, they're going to tell you the license is not required. If it's required, you're on the safe side. I think that sometimes by being overprotective is much more safer than try to be cool and say, no, we're going to make the sale.
Right.
I've been in companies when you are familiar when they are like on a quarter end or year end, they have to close the deal regardless. They have to make the sale. The sales teams, they don't care who are they selling to. If they are selling, for them, it's the same thing as if they are selling to a nice guy in Oklahoma or if they are selling to a terrorist guy in Afghanistan, because the money is the same, right? So they want to close the business. But the thing is that on the trade compliance team, you have to beat sometimes the bad guys and say, listen, I don't care if you're closing a business or we're risking a business of $10 million if it's going to be against the law, right? Because at the end, it's not that you are going to get 10 million bucks. It's that you're going to go to jail and then you're going to penalize and then you are not going to charge those 10 million bucks. And everybody's going to be on the street, looking for it. So that's something that is very, very important. And that I've seen that a lot of companies, they don't realize how important that is. They rely on assistants, or interns that are working with customs brokers. The customs brokers are not the liable guys, are the exporters, and the exporters are the company, not the customs broker. The customs broker is the facilitator, but the company is really the liable guy. So that's something that my company works on that. We go into a company and say, okay, show me what you have. Do you have processes? Fine. Who owns them? How accurate they are? Who are you shipping to? What are your products? What are the countries are you shipping to?
Right.
Who's
so
doing that?
You
Exactly. You have to go to do like a detailed audit. At the beginning, you have to do like a high level audit to see if you have processes, fine. Where are the indicators of the processes? Because I've seen thousands of processes without KPIs.
Right.
So how can you have a process if you don't have any measure associated to it? You don't have to control it. I've seen also a lot of processes that were, written in 2021. Totally out of date. You have to have processes and they have to be reviewed at least every 6 months. Right? Or they were owned by a guy who left the company, 5 years ago. Right? And there are no liabilities whatsoever by anybody. So that's a huge risk. Huge.
So by ownership, you mean the person who's responsible for it?
Right. Usually like the executive team.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, I was in charge of cybersecurity at Trader Joe's, and we had similar audits once a year for credit card data, and they got pretty rigorous. They came in and made sure we were protecting the data and not giving it away, not having hackers in, stuff like that. Similar in concept, I guess. You're protecting against the bad guys.
Exactly.
Basically.
The thing is that, you are like the goalkeeper, right? You are trying to protect the company from any goal that, is going to keep, get you out of guard. You have to be aware that there may be some balls coming from here or there. So you have to be there waiting for them.
Right.
So the more protected you are, I think the more confident you can be, right? So it is very important to start measuring everything. I am kind of a measure freak. I like to have like dashboards with ongoing KPIs. I need to know exactly who they own them, how accurate they are, who's reviewing them really, and the thing is that there are some tools, aside from the regulations that are, black and white, there are some tools that can help you to be more professional in that sense. For example, if you use the methodology used or recommended by ISO 9001, they provide you all the guidelines that you can provide. If you have a process, put it in there. If you have a trade compliance organization, you can audit and you can make that organization certified by an ISO 9001 certifier. Right? And if something goes wrong, because usually in every single company, something falls through the cracks. If you have a policy that has been, certified as an ISO 9001, PVP is more flexible with you.
Of course.
That if you don't have anything.
Of course. You're at least trying.
Exactly. And they are very flexible. They say, okay, you ship to these guys, it's like, you shouldn't do it. Right? But if they see that you don't have anything that an assistant from what department is taking care of that, and she hasn't have any kind of formal training, she doesn't own anything, she's not liable for anything, they are not going to look that way.
Yep. Now, I this is back in the 1990s when we were having the war with Iraq, and I was quite surprised to find out that PlayStation consoles were a problem because the chips in those were used in the missiles. So sometimes it's a little indirect, I gather, that you have to kind of widen your view. Sometimes even a toy can be used incorrectly or for malicious purposes. And I gather that what you're talking about would hope to protect against that kind of thing too.
Exactly. Unfortunately, I believe that a lot of companies are more concerned about lowering import costs. And they say, okay, if we import from this country or we ship to this country or we use this vendor, we are going to reduce our shipping costs by this much or our logistics costs by this much. But they don't see like the big pictures of the liability. Because if you are not compliant with the liability risk, your whole logistics organization will fall down.
And you're going to get sued.
Exactly.
Or worse. Yep. Yeah, I gather this is being a real problem now with some of the sanctions that are going in place against Russia and Iran and stuff like that. I've been reading about the Russian shadow fleets that kind of bypass all this stuff, including anyway, I'm sure that they don't go through customs at all because that's why they're called shadow fleets.
There are some, it is funny because I've seen some examples of companies in Finland, for example. They have some distribution of X, Y, and Z products. And after the Russia embargo, the shipment to these companies multiplied by 100. And the demand in Finland it didn't increase that much. So It's obvious that they are reshipping everything to Russia, right? Because they are like border countries. So although the company say, yeah, but we are shipping to, and we are selling to Finland, and we are shipping to Finland, and we have all the contract with them saying that they're not going to ship, the numbers and the logic doesn't show that way. It
Right.
proves something different. So sometimes, common sense is the lost common of the sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. If common sense was common, everybody would have it, and they don't, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. It's the least common of the sense.
And that's why you need standards, like you said. So what is it? You said 9001, so that it helps enforce your common sense.
Yeah, the 9001, the ISO 9001 provides you with some structure that you can follow in order to organize, I think, that processes. So it's like, okay, if you're compliant, if you're not compliant, if there's a rejection, if no a rejection, who owns them, where is the information, how accurate it is, when was it updated, blah, 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 blah. So there are a lot of guidelines. It provides all the guidelines, there's a lot of valuable ones that you can follow. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that if you follow it, you're going to be efficient. No, you are going to be compliant, but not efficient.
Right.
So there is always have to be like a marriage between efficiency and compliance.
I take it that customs is part of this, going through customs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when I get some stuff from Italy once in a while, model kits and things, and they always have to go through customs, and they sometimes rip open the boxes and see what's in it. It's quite amusing to me, like it's a model kit, people. But so I'm sure that's on a micro level the same kind of thing. There's some controls on that from this company, and they have to make sure that it's valid.
I remember years ago, just after the the war with Iraq, I met a guy from the government. He was working from the Department of State. It was like a shipment control conference in London. So I was in London. Mm-hmm. But he was one of the speakers. So, after the presentation, we met at the bar, the best place to meet, right? And we were talking, and I said, listen, but how do you know if there are like briefcase atomic bombs that they're going to be shipped? Because everybody was concerned about the bomb, right? So, well, the thing is that the story, because I think that Larry King had an interview with somebody from KGB. Mm-hmm. And said that, once that the USSR split, there were a lot of concerns of briefcase atomic bombs. There were some big bombs, like on a very small size. And they didn't know where they were, right? Once that they separated on these republics and all that. So they had no accounting for it. So the guy said, well, that information was not too out of scope. It was kind of accurate. The thing is that it's not like a small briefcase. They were like a big backpacks. Okay, that's fine.
Right.
It made me feel better. No, it didn't, right? And the thing was that they know that if they wanted to ship something like it, they are not going to ship from Osama bin Laden to Donald Trump, on the box. It's not going to show that way, right?
Right.
It's going to be smuggled in a box of soda from Coca-Cola, shipped to, I don't know, to any other company. And then they're going to reroute it, right? So there was like a big concern about the importance of the physical inspections. And the containers, usually they are inspected in a big container, 3 to 5%. That's it. So you have 95% chance of getting through customs.
Yeah, they can't inspect them all. No.
So they have profile inspections and all that stuff. But physical inspections, 5%.
And even those aren't thorough, I'm sure.
Yeah, they usually use these huge scanners.
Right.
But due to the volume of the containers, it is pretty much impossible to do it.
So I guess the takeaway is make sure that you're legal in the area of customs and whatever, trading and so forth. And make sure you're up to snuff, because otherwise you could get into some serious trouble. Why don't you give a little short synopsis on the whole thing for the listeners?
Yeah, definitely. You can be legal, so you can be compliant up to a certain point. Yeah. But it is critical that you have your own controls, right? Because if you rely on a custom broker, the custom broker doesn't know your product. He just moves cargo. He's not familiar with any other characteristic. He doesn't know if this bunch of wires can be used on a missile, right? And they are controlled by ITAR. They have no idea of that. The company does. So if they find something wrong with that, the custom broker is going to play dumb, and the exporter is going to take the bite. So the thing is, and basically what I want to mention is make your your compliance department compliant. Make sure you
Right. Right. Of course.
the first thing is who manages it? This guy. What is the team? We have no team. What are the resources that you're using? We have no resources. Do you have like a system in order to do the compliance tracking? You know, you can have SAP, you're going to have, there are some filters that can run all your orders through all the government lists. So if you don't have that, trust me, you're going to be in really, really deep trouble. So
Gotcha.
my recommendation is be compliant and be sure that you are compliant.
And check it once in a while.
Audit your company once in a while. It could be once a year, once every 6 months if you want to be overprotective. Train your people. Be sure that you have all the KPIs in place and you have like a legal team providing you with all the new regulations, because all the regulations are coming every single day.
Okay.
Today you are not able to ship to Russia, but 3 years ago you were able to.
Right.
Right. So, and one day, I know there are some companies that you cannot ship to in China, for example, Huawei. Huawei is a huge telephone company in China, and you cannot ship anything to them. Although
Right.
the country is not bad, the company is bad.
Right. Sometimes individuals are banned too.
Exactly.
Understanding.
So you have companies, individuals, money laundering, terrorism. There are a lot of reasons why they're banning a lot of people.
Yep. So, well, thank you for coming on. How can people reach you?
Well, my phone number, you have my phone number, is 928-988-3301. Or they can go to my website, which is www.beckham, V as in Victor, ECKAM.com.
Okay.
And all the contact information is there. And I'll be more than glad. I can go in and do like a free initial assessment of what they have. And they can tell you, then, okay, listen, you have to do this, this, this. And if you want to become ISO 9001 certified on the trade compliance part, I can walk you through. So that's
nice. Well, thank you for coming. I'm Richard Lowe with the Writing King and Ghostwriting Guru. This has been the Leaders and Their Stories podcast, and you can find me at thewritingking.com or ghostwriting.guru. Appreciate you listening to this interesting story that we usually don't hear much about. It's kind of hidden in the background for most people, and it's fascinating because you hear in the news all the time about countries being, there's sanctions here and sanctions there. Oh, these sanctions are removed, whatever. So it's fascinating. So thank you for listening.
Okay, Richard, I really appreciate